with the actual dars. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu wa sallam ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله السميع العليم ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله السميع العليم ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله السميع العليم. Last time we gave just an introduction to fiqh. Today we'll actually get into the text of Ibn Ashir, Matn Ibn Ashir, Al-Murshid Al-Mu'in. Hopefully by now, many of you, most of you have some version of this, either this translation, which we recommended by Ustadh Ustadh Tariq, I believe, or here, Asadullah Yait. And we also have the book by Sheikh Ali al-Raqi, which is a commentary, more so than a translation. And I believe one of the students, who was it? I believe Sister Jessica, she recommended and organized many of the recommendations in the class. Barakallahu fiha. So please take a look at that. That was very beneficial. Okay. All right. So, Bismillah. So, he says, or actually, one thing we briefly did not do is give an introduction to who is Ibn Ashir. Who is Abdul Wahid Ibn Ashir? Abdul Wahid Ibn Ashir is a scholar from the end of the 15th century. He passed away around 1582. He passed away around 1582. And Hira, if you don't mind, I'm going to make you the co-host so you can admit people who are coming in later. So if anyone comes in later, please admit them, inshallah. Okay, so around 1582, he passed away. And this is around 1,000 years, around 990 Hijri, if I remember correctly, 990 Hijri. And this is about 1,000 years, of course, after the Prophet ﷺ did Hijrah. And his grandparents were from Andalus, from Muslim Spain, okay? And his grandfather himself is a very famous wali, also by the name of Ibn Ashir as-Silawi, and you can find him, his darih, in his burial place in Morocco to this day. It's very prominent. One of my friends, and I believe some of you in this class may know him, sent this picture of the darih, mashallah, very prominent, where his grandfather is buried. He himself is buried in Fez, where he was born and raised and studied, for the most part, in Fez. And he is buried there, though to access the place where he's buried, Sheikh Ali al-Raqi actually told me it's in a quite a dangerous area. So do not try to go on your own. But if you go, perhaps with somebody who knows where he's buried, they can show you, inshallah. So Ibn Ashir, as we mentioned, he studied, and he was born and raised and studied in Fez, in the Andalusian side specifically, because Fez itself is a city with two sides. It has the original Moroccan side, and that has a great side. The one part of the city is entirely from descendants of Andalus. And you can see this in the architecture, and you can see this even the families that are still settled there to this day. They are from what was once Andalus. Okay, so he was from this side and this heritage. And primarily his studies were in Fez, though he also did a journey, as many scholars do, from both East and West to Hajj. And what they used to do back in the day, because the Hajj journey was once in a lifetime, because you may not even know if you come back from it alive. And because it takes so long, the ulama, they would stop along the way. They would stop along the way and they would take knowledge from scholars along the way and along the way. And so in this way, he took from many scholars um, from both the East and the West, from many scholars from both the East and the West. And, before, very briefly mention one minor thing, which is that there was no such concept of nationalism, or it wasn't as heavily ingrained before the modern era, before the past 100 years, when it was again imposed by the Western standards. People in Morocco traveled all over the world. People in India traveled all over the world and took knowledge from people all over the world. So the Ummah was more united even on a scholarly basis. All right. Ibn Ashir, he had many students. Of them is Mayyara. Of them is Sheikh Mayyara, who wrote the most prominent sharh on Ibn Ashir to this day. Two shuruhat, actually. What is known as the Sharh al-Kabir and the Sharh al-Saghir, the big sharh and the small sharh. And from his students is also Abdul Qadir al-Fasi, Abdul Qadir al-Fasi, who is in our lineage of teachers, Abdul Qadir al-Fasi. Some of my teachers, he took from the teachers, that once took from Abdul Qadir al-Fasi. And so that is part of now, if you finish this book, it is part of your lineage as well, your spiritual lineage, okay? And Abdul Qadir al-Fasi, one of his most prominent books of many is Khulasatul Usul, a short primer on usul that maybe one day we will also teach, okay? And the reason I mentioned this all, you might be thinking, oh, man, I just want to get into the text. Why is he already told me about Imam Malik, he already told me about other people. Now he's telling me about Ibn Ashir as well. And even about Abdul Qadir al-Fasi and Mayyara. The reason to know who these people are and to remember their names, even though their names might seem strange for many of us who grew up in the West, like these names, we're used to names like James and John and Jonathan and maybe even Ahmed, but Mayyara, Abdul Qadir al-Fasi, Ibn Ashir, these names are strange. But the reason to know these names is these scholars, these ulama, are the heroes of this ummah. They are the heroes of our ummah. They aren't just academics. A lot of people, that when you hear scholars, they think of them as just academics, professors, the old professors. No, they weren't just academics. They were leaders, warriors, politicians, merchants, and scholars. Some of them were fathers and brothers. Some of them were even mothers and wives and scholars. So these are heroes of our ummah. And just as we know the heroes of, again, the secular, modern, or you can even say postmodern, post-enlightenment West, like Newton and Galileo and George Washington, just as we know these heroes, we should know the heroes of our ummah, like Ibn Ashir and Mayyara and Abdul Qadir al-Fasi. Okay? Any questions so far? And then we'll dive into the text directly. Okay? No questions? All right. And you can also, if you're shy, you can also drop questions in the chat, or you can say them out loud, however. Okay. So we are going to begin with a section on Tahara. He says, Kitab al-Tahara. And for those of you following along in Dr. Asdullah Yates' translation, it's page number 19. He says, Kitab al-Tahara, the book of purification. The book of purification. And purification is of two types, okay? Is of two types. There is physical purification and ritual purification. Physical purification is known as tahara khabathiyya. And ritual purification is known as tahara hadathiyya. Okay? Physical and ritual. Both of these types, both physical and ritual, are sometimes done with water, Most of the time, they are done with water, and sometimes they're done without water. Okay? And the ritual purification that is done with water is sometimes done by washing, and sometimes it's done by wiping. Once again, purification is of two types, physical and ritual. Two types, physical and ritual. Physical, like removing blood, removing feces, removing urine, for example, after going to the restroom. And inshallah, maybe in one of the review sessions, we can go over that. Ibn Ashir himself does not delve into that too much, but you can also find it in Shaykh Ali al-Raqi's book. As for ritual purification, that is like wudu, ghusl, tayammum. This is ritual purification, okay? Because when you use the restroom, you may not actually have any najasa on yourself. So why do you have to go and wash your face? Because there's some meaning to washing your face, okay? We'll talk about that in wudu. So this is ritual purification, not physical. Now, this ritual purification is also of two types, with water and without water. With water and without water. And with water is also of two types, by washing or by wiping. For example, you wash your face or you wipe your head, right? You wipe your hair and your head, okay? So this is tahara. Any questions there? Now, both of these, is there any spiritual purification also? Yes, if you're referring to spiritual purification as purification of the heart, that exists, but that is not in the realm of fiqh. That is not in the realm of fiqh. That is in the realm of tasawwuf or tazkiyah. And that is why you have, for example, Shaykh Muhammad Mawlud, who wrote the book Mathharatul Qulub. Mathharatul Qulub, from the same root as tahara. But here we're talking just simply about the realm of fiqh. The realm of fiqh. Okay. He says, you're welcome, Ali. Okay, he says, وَفَصْلٌ وَتَحْصُلُ الطَّهَارَةُ بِمَا مِنَ التَّغَيُّرِ بِشَيْءٍ سَلِمًا. Purification is obtained by means of water which has not been adulterated by anything. Purification is obtained by means of water which has not been adulterated by anything. Okay? Now, as we said, physical and ritual purification. Physical and ritual purification. Both of them, does everyone remember what anyone can say? What are the two types of ritual purification? As we just mentioned.
Hadath wa khabath.
This is the two types of purification. Excellent. Yes. Two types of purification. Hadath and khabath. Ritual and physical. What are the two types of ritual purification now? Excellent, Zubair. Excellent, Anne. With water and without water. What are the two types of physical purification? With water and without water. So when water is a necessary element for the vast majority of purification, this is why he begins with water. Okay, and this is why all the ulama, most of the ulama, any text you read, even from here on out, most of the time they will begin with water. Okay, the contemporary texts. So he says that purification is obtained by means of water which has not been adulterated by anything. Water, the kind of water you need to purify, whether to wash some blood or whether to do wudu or ghusl, the kind of water you need is water that is not mixed with anything. What does it mean to be mixed? What does it mean to be mixed? It means that you can either see a change in the color. Number one, can either see a change in the color. Number two, you can smell a change if you sniffed it. Here I have some sparkling water, okay? If you sniff it, if you smell a difference from this water, and here I have some actual physical water. I didn't mean to bring props to the dars, but I just happen to be sitting at the dinner table, okay? So we have this sparkling water. If I smell it and there's a difference between this and the actual water, then that is an instance of change. If I look at it and it looks like a different color, then that is an instance of a change. If I taste it and it smells like it tastes different, then that is also a instance of change. Okay? Otherwise, it is not changed. Otherwise, it is not changed. So this sparkling water, in reality, is not changed. If it's just pure sparkling water, as far as I can tell, there's no change in color. It's just the bottle's green. There's no change in smell, and there's no change in taste. It is just that it is carbonated, okay? And if you leave it out, the carbon goes away. Any questions on that? That is what it changes. So he's saying anything that is changed, you cannot use it for wudu. You cannot use it to, if, for example, you have a baby, a toddler urinates on the floor, or the diaper overflows, you must use, in order to clean that area of the floor, ritually speaking, physically speaking, from a physical purification, from an Islamic perspective, you must use water that is not changed, okay? Not simply carpet cleaner. All right? Okay. Any questions there? All right. Then he says, إِذَا تَغَيَّرَ بِنَجْسٍ طُرِحَ or بِنَجَسٍ طُرِحَ أو طاهر لعادة قد صلحا. Line number 55. If it has been adulterated, mixed, if it has been mixed with something impure, it is to be rejected. If something falls in the water, urine, feces, blood, seminal fluid, if any of this falls in the water, and you can see a visible change, then that water is no longer pure, okay? That water is no longer pure. And he says it is to be rejected, طُرِحَ. And actually the better meaning, it is to be thrown away. It is to be thrown out, because it cannot be used for worship. It cannot be used for wudu, nor can it be used for even drinking, or for eating, or for cleaning, nothing. Okay? It is not to be benefited for a human. It is not to be benefit for a human. Okay? So you might think, oh, when would I ever, use bloody water? When would I ever drink bloody water, right? You might say, when would I ever drink water with some kind of urine in it, right? Well, you perhaps may not. But for example, here's a good example. When they're making broth for soup, maybe you go into a restaurant, and it's a Japanese restaurant. You like ramen, so you go to a Japanese restaurant. And in this Japanese restaurant, they have seafood options, they have vegetarian options. But when you're ordering your ramen, they will ask you, what kind of broth do you want? We have two options. We have chicken broth and we have pork broth. Chicken is not halal, pork is not halal. The chicken they serve is not halal, okay? The pork, never halal. Okay. Now, you say, you know what? I'm not gonna eat the pork. I'm not gonna eat the chicken. I'm just going to take the broth. It doesn't even have any chicken pieces. They say, is there any chicken pieces? No, it's all filtered out. Is there any pork pieces? No, it's all filtered out. But the reality is that these are najas things, right? They are najas because it was not halal. Or let's just stick with pork, definitely najas. All right. And it was cooked in that water, and the water became najas, and therefore you cannot eat it. Okay, so there is a situation, very common situation that many of us may have run into, where you may think it is okay to drink or eat that thing or drink that water, but it is not permissible because it is najas, because it has been changed by something najas. Any questions there? Okay. Then he says, أو طاهر لعادة قد صلح. Now, what happens if it is changed by something tahir, by something pure? For example, you put in um, uh, some, you have some water, you make it fruit punch. Okay, fruit punch has water or no? Yeah, it has water, but it was just you added some powder to it. Maybe you add some Kool-Aid, right? You add some Gatorade. Though I believe they're Zionists, so definitely don't add some Gatorade, right? So you add something to the water that's pure. And you said, you know what? I barely added any Kool-Aid. Oh, you had a bottle of water with you. Okay, you went on a camping trip, you had a bottle of water with you, and you're like, oh, you know what? Let me just make this into Kool-Aid. So you brought some Kool-Aid powder and you're about to pour it in. You pour a few drops in, okay, into the bottle of water. But then you remember, oh, yeah, they said, yeah, Ahmed said, just leave this for wudu because we don't have wudu water, okay? Now, the bottle of water, it changes color a little bit. You said, you know what? Ahmed's not even going to notice. He'll probably just do wudu with it. But you notice the change in the water color, then that is not permissible to do wudu with. Okay? That is not permissible to do wudu with. But he says, لِعَادَةٍ قَدْ صَلُحَا. It may be used for day-to-day non-ritual use. Meaning, you can, of course, drink it. Ahmed, when Ahmed finally comes over, you can be like, I'm sorry, I actually put a little bit of Kool-Aid into it. So we might as well put in all the Kool-Aid powder and just drink it. That's fine. But to say that, oh, maybe Ahmed won't notice, it's just a very light shade of pink, and he'll just do his wudu. Maybe he might wonder why the water is so sweet when he's gargling, but he'll do his wudu. That is not okay. Okay? For wudu. It's not okay for ritual purposes and for cleaning, physical purification. Okay? That is the meaning of al-tahirin i'adatan qad saluha. What about bubble bath? Bathing in water bubbles has to be followed by pure water shower for ritual purposes. As far as I know, bubble baths are they're made. How are they made? Maybe somebody can put in the details of how bubbles are generated. I know there's some salt. Sometimes people put salt. Um, but maybe somebody can share the details of how the bubbles are made. Soap. If it's soap, then yes, it's something pure, but it is will affect the water. It will change the water in such a way that, and if it changes the color, right? If it changes the color, that's important, or the taste. which definitely will change the taste, then it is not permissible to use for wudu. And even if you did it for wudu, your wudu would not count. Okay? So yeah, if you're taking such a bubble bath or bubble shower, then you should take a pure water shower. At the end, just add 1 minute, turn on the shower, pure water, and do your ritual purification. Um, Let me look briefly at the questions here. Hussein asked same thing with cross-contamination at non-halal restaurant, even if they fries or other okay food, but cook meat on or in same thing. What are Yahweh fries? You can maybe enlighten us on that. I hope they're not serving them at Falafel Corner. But in any case, in terms of cross-contamination, in terms of um, this is a slightly different issue, but yes, it's not related to water, right? We're talking about now about eating meats. It's not related to water or liquid, which is the core subject we're talking about. But nevertheless, yes, similar principle. There can be cross-contamination, but it's not directly related. And inshallah, we can leave that question for the chat or DM. I thought pigs and dogs are considered pure in the Maliki school. Why is the cooked pork najis? Excellent question. Excellent question. The pig is tahir when it's alive. When it's alive, it's tahir. So you have a pig on a farm. We went to a petting zoo once or a petting farm once in Northern California, and they had pigs, okay, in the petting farm. It is completely permissible to touch them. Um, when we went over to the pig section, there were a lot of pigs, all kinds of pigs, and they're saying, this is a big pig, the small pig, and they're like, go ahead, touch them, pat them. And I was, the pigs were coming around, swarming around. I was like, Alhamdulillah, we're Maliki, right? Alhamdulillah, we're Maliki, and there's no issue with pigs, especially dogs, right? When I used to work in some of the tech companies, dogs everywhere in California, right? I would not know how I would absolutely not know how a Shafi would survive there. Because you have a dog in every single row, okay? And that dog is going to come up whether you like it or not and rub its leg against you and jump on you, whether you like it or not. So Alhamdulillah again for being Maliki. So in that situation, yes, it's pure. But as soon as you slaughter or try to slaughter this pig, it's no longer pure, okay? Because as it says in Khalil here, الطاهر ميت ما لا دم له هو البحري ولو طالت حياته وما ذكي وجزءه إلا محرم الأكل إلا محرم الأكل, that it is whatever is slaughtered except that which is haram to eat. Pig is haram to eat or not? It is haram. So if you slaughter a pig, there's no such thing as slaughter. There's no such thing as a zabiha pig. Okay, zabiha's hand slaughtered pig. So it is still haram, and so it becomes najis once it's cut. Okay. Are the bodies of pigs and dogs clean? I think Ali, that answers your question. They're all clean according to the Malikis when they're alive. When they're alive. وَالْحَيُّ وَدَمْعُ وَالْحَيُّ, as it says in Khalil. Okay. As for when they're dead, there's some tafsil as for when they are dead, for Malikis, as for when they are dead, for pigs, always najis. And for dogs, there is some tafsil. Okay, there's some tafsil. Okay. What about wudu from a fresh stream that might be slightly muddy? We'll get to that. Sister Mona, as a follower of the Shafi'i, it is new for me. With pigs, we wouldn't even go that way. Well, you're here, you're studying the Maliki text, mashallah. Maybe you're doing it for your own benefit, but yes, in the Maliki school, you can pet all the pigs you want. Is it permissible to touch the pig parts while wearing gloves after they've been killed? I'm asking because I used to work in a meat department and our store sold pork chops and etc. Yes, it is permissible to touch them with gloves, and it is even permissible to touch them without gloves. All we're saying is that it is najis. So if you were to touch them without gloves, you would have to wash your hands properly with water, not just soap and water, but with water. And then before praying. Okay? All right. Finally, he says, إِلَّا إِذَا لَازَمَهُ فِي الْغَالِبِ كَمُغْرَةٍ فَمُطْلَقٌ كَالذَّائِبِ. Unless this pure thing is usually part of the water, like the red coloring of turf. This is mughra, is kind of like a pigment that used to be found or is still found in clay, but it's not. I'm not sure if it's still used in modern clothing, but it's a pigment that's found in clay, and it can be reddish sometimes. It can be yellowish. So what he's saying is that the exception to this rule. What did we say for water that is changed by Kool-Aid? Can you use it for wudu? Anyone? No, you cannot. What about water that is changed by sugar? Somebody put some sugar in water. Can you use it for wudu? No, you cannot. Somebody put some fruits in the water. You know how nowadays when you go to at the fancy, offices and hotels, they don't just serve you normal water, they serve you water with fruits in it. Okay? Some lemons, some, I don't know, whatever they put in there, coriander, parsley, cucumbers. Can you use it for wudu? No, you cannot. The exception to this, the exception to this is when that thing that changes the water naturally occurs in water. When the changer of the water naturally occurs in water. Like what? The biggest example is ocean water. Ocean water, is it changed or unchanged? It's changed. By what? By salt. By what? By oysters and sea fish and shells and the mud of the ocean floor. You go camping again, or you go just down a creek. You go hiking and you see a pond. Okay, and after time you say, okay, I don't have any water with me. It's about a mile back from the trail. Can I just use this muddy pond? Yes. Even if it gets mud on me? Yes, you can. Because mud is something that naturally occurs in water. Okay? So this is the exception. This is when, as we said, if something is changed by something najis, then you must throw it away. You can't use it. If something is changed by something tahir, you can use it to eat and drink, and you can drink your Kool-Aid, you can drink your lemonade, but you cannot use it for wudu. Unless that tahir thing, that pure thing, naturally occurs in water. Okay? And he gave the example of the clay pigment. And then finally, he said, similarly, كَالذَّائِبِ, he just throws in another mas'ala at the end. He just throws in another issue at the end. He says, كَالذَّائِبِ, because some people might think, oh, I can't use snow or ice. I go skiing. I'm in Colorado, or I'm in the Alps, or I'm in, some mountain range. I'm not sure what's in Australia. If you have some folks in Australia. Some mountain range in Australia where I'm going skiing and then I'm going on a long trail. Can I use the snow for wudu? Yes, but only if it's melted, okay? Only if it's melted. So maybe you can mix it with some water you have, and it's not too hot. You leave it out, it melts, and then you can use it for wudu. With that, we have ended thus for today. Let me answer some of the questions here. But if somebody else has questions, they can go ahead and ask. Just to be clear, Sheikh, can those aforementioned waters can be used to remove physical impurities? Yes, but not ritual purification water. Zubair, maybe you can mention, because now the aforementioned, I'm not sure what is that refers to, okay? So maybe you can mention, feel free if you want to chat aloud.
Sure. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum
Like that Kool-Aid water example or the cucumber water, that can be used to remove hadath or remove other daily tasks, but it can't be used for ritual water. Is this the correct understanding?
When we say it can be used for daily tasks, it means for, you can say non-religious things. Okay? Washing your clothes, you get a stain on your shirt, you go over, you find some cucumber water and you pour it, just to make sure it's a clean white shirt. You don't want to show up to the meeting in that clean white shirt with a stain on it. So you pour some cucumber water on it. Can you do that? Yes. However, if it's something for religious, either ritual or physical purification, as we mentioned here, we'll talk about physical purification more later, maybe in a review session. Then you cannot use it for that. You cannot use it for wudu. You cannot use it for ghusl. You cannot use it for washing blood off your pant so that you can go pray, right? It can only be used for non-religious daily activities. Does that make sense?
Yes, exactly.
No,
Sorry.
yeah.
So the removal of hadath is considered religious. Like, let's say someone's using the restroom and
Yes, the removal of khabath is considered religious. In fact, you will find many chapters on it. You mentioned going to the restroom. There's an entire chapter in the more advanced texts. Actually, I think there's even a section in Ibn Ashir, if I'm not mistaken. But even more advanced texts, you'll find an entire section on the adab of going to the restroom. And in Ibn Ashir, it's a couple lines, or 2 lines, on going to the restroom and how to remove hadath. This is a religious activity at its core. So yes, I hope that answers that question. Yeah. Can let me know if it does not, inshallah. Jazakallahu yakum. So Sister Anne said, rainwater collected from the sky seems to be fine. But what about off of a roof with dissolving natural components like soil and plant parts, but also roofing granules? If filtered before use and the unnatural granules are removed, is this water suitable for wudu? That's a great question. Very realistic. So if, again, I want you to think about this, Sister Anne, and use the principles that we took in this class. Dissolving natural components. Soil, does it naturally occur in water? Plant parts, does that naturally occur in water? And is it changed from the plant parts? You have to see that, right? Where is that, once you get this filtered, and then the roof obviously is not naturally occurring in water, granules. Now, when you filter out the water and remove the roof granules, that water you have, is it changed? Is it changed? If it's not changed, yeah, you can use it. If it's changed, then you have to ask, is it changed by the soil? Or is it changed by the plant parts? Or is it changed by something else? Okay? And I'll let you answer for each of those. If it's changed by the soil, can you use it? If it's changed by the plant parts, can you use it? If it's changed by the roof granules, can you use it? Okay? You can post your answers in the chat while I answer the rest of the questions. Back to your example, if there's sugar and water added, but the amount is so small that the taste does not change, can it be used for wudu? Even if I know there's sugar in it, because you can use it for wudu, yes. If it's not changed. The first thing to check, is it changed? The second thing to check, what is it changed by? Okay? If it's not changed, you can use it. If it's changed, check what it's changed by. Okay? Brother Yahya, obviously pool water would not be permissible, right? It depends what kind of pool you're talking about. If you're talking about, the chlorine pools, the swimming pools, it's not permissible, no, because the taste is changed. And even though chlorine is naturally occurring in water, we did some research into this, some of the fellow teachers and the kind of chlorine that they put in the water, I think it's like the kind of chemical compound they put in that water, as far as we can tell, is not the same compound they put in drinking water. Okay? And so with drinking water, there's no issue. With tap water, there's no issue. With swimming pool water, there is. What is the ruling on dog saliva, please? It's tahir, according to the Maliki school. All of the dog and all of the pig and their salivas, It's tahir as long as they're alive, okay? Yes, because there is chlorine and most likely urine. Yes, there's sometimes urine in the pool as well. Though I don't know if there's enough that would change the taste. Hopefully you have not tasted that. Sister Elizabeth asked question regarding eating meats. Are we only to be eating halal meat, even if it's chicken, turkey, as long as it's not pork? Can we also eat non-halal? Sister Elizabeth, this is a bigger question. I will leave it for later, inshallah. This is not part of this dars. Or if it's really pressing for you, then you can send me a DM on WhatsApp, inshallah. Otherwise, we'll study this later on. Aisha Abdullah, I have a couple of questions and maybe they're asked. I know, inshallah, there's many good questions. But just for clarification, can sisters recite Quran aloud when it's that time of the month, or does it have to be quiet? No, they can recite aloud. Can sisters touch the Quran when it's not after perform wudu, or would you can recite the Quran out loud. You can touch the Quran only if you're teaching or learning, okay? If you're a student of the Quran. And I think, yes, excellent. Jazakallah khairan hara. She posted the article. You can see the answers there. All right. Since it's not permanently changed, sorry farming and hoping to install rainwater collection system. Excellent question, sister. I know there's no problem. I think that was a great question. Very realistic. All my life I've been following Shafi and I've been found any other Malikis in Sri Lanka. Can you tell me when I should start practicing Maliki madhab? Brother Shafiq, mashallah, ahlan wa sahlan. I'm guessing you're a Tamil if you're from Sri Lanka. I'm also Tamil. We can talk more about that offline. You can DM me, inshallah. Okay. Last question here for today, and then we'll leave the rest for the review groups. We'll take a 5-minute break, and then we'll briefly enter the review groups, okay? If we come in contact with a dog and they drool on our clothes, do we have to perform wudu immediately, or is it okay because it isn't on our skin? Again, according to the Maliki madhab, the dog is tahir. The saliva is tahir. That doesn't mean we can keep dogs as pets. There's some discussion to be had there, right? But in terms of living in the West, and now even the East in many parts, where dogs have become so common, it makes it easy for you. You don't have to worry about the dog jumping on you. You can pet the dog. You can, whatever you want. You can hold the dog, right? You can admire other people's dogs, right? But it does not break your wudu, and it's not just in the Maliki school, okay? No, I wanted a dog. Mashallah. To be honest, yes, some dogs are quite cute, and at one point I wanted a dog as well. But I will send a video in the chat about dogs, inshallah, that will, I think, clarify. Okay, so 5-minute break. And then what we'll do is we'll see if we can have some breakout rooms here, inshallah. Let me see if we can enable this. Everyone, please take a break, stand up, renew your energy. And if you don't want to stay for the rooms, that's okay. But if you don't want to stay, please stay on, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Um, Hopefully you guys have had a chance to rest. We're gonna get started in a minute or so. So right now, the breakout rooms are not working. I'll have to check in with Sister Erin, inshallah, our administrator. But what we'll do is my wife, she will send a link in the chat for the sisters, okay? She will send a link in the chat for the sisters only. Once again, brothers, do not join. Listen to this for sisters only. And then the brothers will stay here in this Zoom link with Sidi Usama. And when he is ready, he can start the dars, inshallah. For the sisters, they'll receive a link in the chat. Again, this is a review group. You are welcome to ask more questions. It's a more intimate discussion, but of course, please respect the TAs. But this is more like a discussion between friends. So you have time to discuss more and ask more in-depth questions. All right. Salam.
All right, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Let's see. Did the sisters get the link yet? Okay. Ustadh, should we wait for the sisters to get the link and then start with the brothers, or?
No. Go ahead. You can start.
All right.
And I will send the link soon.
Sounds good. All right. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. So inshallah, today we're gonna go over one of the things that are essential to understanding the subject of fiqh, and particularly within this Matn of Ibn Ashir, and that's going to be the concept of the mukallaf. As we remember from last class, Ustadh Tariq was talking about the various fundamental principles of each science that you go over, and the subject in particular of fiqh being af'al al-mukallafin, which is the actions of those who are considered legally responsible. So it's one of the essential components to the knowledge of fiqh. And again, this is supposed to be like a discussion, so folks feel free to unmute yourself, ask questions, throw them in the chat, and stop me at any time. I'm just going to go over the breakdown that Sheikh Ali Laraki has in his book. I think it's a very great breakdown. So we'll just follow along with that, inshallah. So does that sound good to folks? I think folks are entering. Okay. Sorry, let me just flip to it real quick. Okay. So the concept of mukallaf directly translates to the one who is responsible. And the first obligation, right, as Sheikh Ibn Ashir says, the first obligation on the one who is responsible is to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and his messengers by their attributes of both. So that's what the first part of this poem is concerned with, but we're in the fiqh portion. So within the fiqh portion in particular, the concept of mukallaf applies to those who actions fall under one of the five categories for. So, whether it's obligatory, uh, recommended, permissible, disliked, or forbidden, that is the relationship that fiqh has with the responsible individual. And then, unlike uh, the I'm sorry, there are signs in particular that determine whether someone is considered legally responsible or not. And there are three main things that the scholars agree upon that determine whether someone is responsible, and that is if they are of sound mind, so someone who is sane. So people who are experiencing insanity, right? They are not considered responsible. Whether that is permanent or temporary. So in a temporary state of insanity, right, we have people who are in and out of states of insanity. Within that temporary state of insanity, they are not considered responsible for their actions. But as soon as they leave that state and they enter a state of sanity, then they are considered responsible for their actions. So that's one nuance that I wanted to distinguish there, but sanity is the first one. The second one is puberty. So within the Islamic framework, there are very clear signs for puberty. For women, it's their first menstruation, right? Pregnancy, right? The ability to get pregnant, right? That determines puberty. And then for both men and women, the emission of seminal fluid or reproductive fluid, thick pubic hair, right? So if you notice that the areas in which children would not grow hair, one is growing thick hair, then that is a sign of puberty. And if none of those signs appear, then 18 years. So there's a difference of opinion on this in particular, but the more prominent opinion is that they become 18 lunar years old. So either the difference of opinion here is whether they're entering their 18th year or that they're completing their 18th year. But the majority of scholars say that when you enter the 18th year, so when you become 18, that is when you are considered legally responsible within the Islamic framework if none of those signs are predate your age. So that is the second thing. The first thing was sanity, excuse me, and the second thing was that they show signs of puberty. And then the third thing is access to the message of Islam. And this one is very interesting because we live in an age of, over information or access to information. So we would consider today that most people have access to information about Islam, right? And in Arabic, this is called bulugh ad-da'wa, right? That the message has been given to you. So someone told you that there is this thing called Islam, right? And you should become Muslim. That is the bare minimum for what is considered receiving the message. Now, if people out of arrogance or negligence or stubbornness do not consider Islam, right, that is them rejecting the message. That's not, contrary to what some may say, that's not considered them not receiving the message. If, they, for whatever reason, reject it, um, that is still considered them receiving the message but rejecting it. So access to the message of Islam is the third thing that constitutes being what is called a mukallaf, or someone who is legally responsible. So those are the three things: sanity, puberty, and access to the message of Islam, or receiving the message of Islam. Does that make sense to folks? Yes,
Yeah,
brother Fahim.
I have a question, brother. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum
So
salam.
just to be clear, you said that if they, I'm gonna take you off headphones because it's feedback.
Can you hear me, brother?
Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you, brother Fahim.
Oh, okay. No, because that's when I was not clear on it. Somebody asked me that. So if they didn't, if they just never studied Islam, we consider that as like they having access and rejecting it. 'Cause they heard about it, but they investigated it.
Yes, if they heard about it, meaning that someone told them that there's this religion called Islam and that you should become Muslim, that is considered receiving the message.
Okay. Jazakallah.
Well, yeah. Any other questions?
I have a question. What is the ruling of someone who never received the message? For example, someone living in an isolated village or an isolated island, and he never received the message. What's the ruling on him?
Well, so there's ikhtilaf on this particular case. So there's an opinion where the person is on their fitra, which is meaning their natural state. But I think I'll review it and check with Ustadh Tariq. But I'm pretty sure that the ruling on that person is that they have not received the message the way it's considered in this definition. But I'll double check and then I'll message it in the group chat, inshallah.
Okay, thank you so much.
No problem.
I have a question, but does it have to remain on the topic of mukallaf?
No, it doesn't. But I will answer to the best of my ability. So
Inshallah.
if it's something I can't answer, then I'll just take it back and send the message, inshallah.
Inshallah. So this is just in regards to like ghusl or even in wudu. But if like one has soap on one's hands and you're using tahir wa mutahhara, like water, like purifying water, and you have soap on your hands, do you have to like completely remove all the soap um and then rewash your hands with just the water in making your wudu or in your ghusl for it to be considered valid? And is there like a time, like, I mean, when the water's flowing, like there's a point in which like the soap is removed and then the water's still hitting that spot essentially, and it's probably very almost instantaneous or very soon after. So I guess I was curious to know, like, if you have to do like a full wash afterwards.
That's a great question. So the the principle that you should apply in all of these situations is the one that we studied in class today, which is, did one of the three attributes of the water change, right?
Mm-hmm.
So did the smell, the taste, or the color change? So when soap mixes with water, if the smell taste or the smell changes or the taste changes, then you cannot make wudu or ghusl with that. So in the case of ghusl, what I've heard the mashayikh say is, and also in the Maliki madhab, there's another condition for ghusl and wudu, which is
The
the
delk. Mm-hmm.
so if something prevents you from doing that, so like if you're if you're not touching in wudu in particular, especially if your hand isn't able to like touch, if it's like slipping and stuff, then there's clearly something in between your two limbs. So what the mashayikh have said is wash the soap off and then make ghusl with water.
Jazakallah khair.
Oh yeah. Any other questions? All right, if there aren't any more questions, we can close out, inshallah. Just one last call. And if you have any questions after this, feel free to send it in the WhatsApp group, and Ustadh Tariq will either get back to it or let me know to get back to it, inshallah. All right, jazakallah khair, everyone. Appreciate your time. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك وأتوب إليك. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Take care.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Wa alaikum salam.